Well, hello there, Sunday school teachers. Welcome back to our YouTube overviews on your Sunday school lessons for this week. We're in lesson 22, and we're looking at secrets to effective leadership. Again, looking at the character of Joshua for the second time. The main body of this text can be found in Joshua chapter 6. To a very common story, a story you should know well, the fall of Jericho. I highly recommend that you read all of chapter 6 to get acquainted with what's going on. But basically, a quick overview of what's happened. The people of Israel are now taking Canaan, the promised land. And the first city that they're going to conquer is Jericho. Jericho was a city with fortified walls, a very reputable military presence in the area. And God, through Joshua, gives a very interesting military plan to overtake the city. In essence, he tells him, Joshua, to tell his people this. This is how you're going to conquer Jericho. We will march around the city, led by a group of priests playing trumpets, and not say a word, not make a sound. We will march one time around the city for 6 days. On the seventh day, we will march 7 times, again, led by priests playing trumpets. And after the 7th time around, everyone will scream. Can I submit to you guys that that's a very unique military presence or military operation or plan, rather? Very interesting. Why would God do something like that? Well, you'll see through this lesson that ultimately this brings him glory. For God uses the unusable. God does the impossible possible, makes the impossible possible, ultimately to display his glory. And we're going to be viewing issues of leadership in this lesson. Let me start off by saying that leadership is something that our world views in one way, and the Bible talks about leadership in another way. Let me give you an example. If you've been paying attention to the news, you realize that there are 4 Republican nominees or 4 Republican party members that are interested in running for president. These are Rick Santorum, Ron Paul, Newt Gingrich, and Mitt Romney. And a lot has been said about them personally, but when it comes to issues of leadership, people identify any one of them as the potential of being a good leader by how well they present their plan, how good the plan they present is, how polished they look, how well they can debate, how good their ideas are, how quote-unquote presidential they look. That's what our world sees as leadership. When you come to sports, when you come, thinking about our boy Drew Brees playing for the Saints, when you look at his leadership capabilities, we always look at his ability on the field to make plays, his ability on the field to think on his feet, his ability on the field to step out of the pocket and to make these decisions. And we think of Sean Payton and his ability to inspire his players, to get his players in order. That's what the world values in terms of leadership. That's not what the Bible values in terms of leadership. Those are good leadership principles. Those are good leadership qualities to have. Jesus himself said that the Son of Man, speaking of himself, did not come to be served, but to serve. So we're going to talk about this thing called servant leadership. What is this thing called servant leadership? In essence, servant leadership is, as Christian leaders, knowing that we ultimately are serving those who we are leading. We have been appointed by God, we have been told by God to do things that ultimately bring him glory and bring those people around him who we are leading closer to him. So when we look at this story, there are certain things that come to mind, certain kind of important points, questions that you might raise for your group. The first one is, God's demands can seem outrageous and crazy. When you look at this plan, this military plan that God proposes for Joshua to take to his people, this is kind of weird. Back then, obviously, based on their technology, based on what they would do or what they could do, Jericho had come into his city and had provided probably the best defense, the best military plan on their end. Certainly, I would think that Israel could have thought, well, let's build up some catapults, let's throw some stones. Let's figure out a way how we can bring these walls down, or maybe invade in the night with spies or do something interesting. None of that happens. And through Joshua, God just displays his power. But I want you to hear this, that God himself tells Joshua. This is verse 2 of chapter 6. See, I have given Jericho into your hand, with its king and mighty men of valor. Now, don't miss that. I have given Jericho into your hand. At this point, Joshua and the people are standing outside of Jericho. That is servant leadership, hearing from God. Ultimately, God has told him, listen, I've taken care of this. This is done. Whatever fight you're going to have, leave that for me. Whatever military plan I'm going to give to you, that's on me. But know this, Joshua, I've given you Jericho. And that's key to identify some of the things in this lesson. The second thing is God's plan requires complete obedience. Much can be said about who Joshua was. Much can be said about how great of a planner he was. Much can be said about what he could do as a person. But it's interesting that Joshua himself is given God's full backing. Listen to Joshua chapter 1, verses 16 through 18. This is the people of Israel commenting on Joshua. And they answered Joshua, all that you have commanded us we will do, and wherever you send us we will go. Just as we obeyed Moses in all things, so we will obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you, as he was with Moses. That's another effective trait of servant leadership when it comes to Christians. The people you are leading can recognize if God is leading you. That's key, because far too often church leaders want to dictate from the pulpit or dictate from the office. But the people can recognize when a servant of Christ is being led by God and when he's not. And they will follow you truly if they see and feel that you're being led by God. And they'll ask of it, of course. Now listen to what God tells Joshua in chapter 3. He says, this is chapter 3, verse 7. The Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that, as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. So notice what's happened here. Where is Joshua's leadership come from? It's come from two places. The first place, it's come from the people of Israel, as they have accepted him as a leader. And the biggest thing that they have asked him, the requirement that they set on Joshua is be with God, hear him. And the second place, place where his leadership comes from is from God himself. God tells him, I will show the people of Israel, I will exalt you in their sight. Ultimately, this has nothing to do with Joshua. Joshua is not the hero of the story. God is. Success in leadership requires certain behavioral adjustments and complete obedience. Not only does God tell Joshua what to do, how to conquer the city, but he gives him specific rules on what to do when you've conquered the city. Pretty much annihilate everything there, keep the gold and the silver, and save Rahab and whoever is in the house. And ultimately, guys, the biggest thing about this lesson is to point people that success belongs to God. God uses us, people who are undeserving, people who deserved his wrath, but received his mercy, to do great things. Ultimately, that points for him. If Joshua would have been this amazing military presence, if Joshua would have been Alexander the Great, then everyone could have looked back and said, aha, look, Alexander the Great was just a great military campaigner. He was just a brilliant military mind. No. God tells Joshua, this is what you're going to tell the people of how I'm going to take Jericho. He does that. Ultimately, God uses the unusable to display his glory. Guys, have a good week. Should you have any questions, feel free to ask.